Thank you all. I don't know how to follow. I'm going to say something.
Go ahead. Say something.
It's hard to follow. Bishop Michael Curry at executive council meetings, but this feels really hard to follow Reverend Lynn Collins. And I'm short, so I'm just going to grab the microphone. That's all right with everybody. It's too tall. It is such an honor to be here with you all and to be asked to be here. I feel really privileged and humbled to be here and grateful for the opportunity to address you all tonight. So I have a few words I do want to say. And I want to point to your theme a little bit and then take us down a journey together. So the theme for this conference, So Flows Our River, Purpose, Faith, and Unity. I love this theme. It's so simple, and it's instructive, and it's inspiring. And yet there's something about that elegant simplicity that we could lose sight of if we just think of it as the theme for a conference. When really it presents us a challenge today as Episcopalians in the church in 2023. Because my friends, we've all been in conversations that include various types of introductions about what an Episcopalian is. And perhaps a friend has asked you, oh, what is the Episcopal Church all about? Or, oh, you're Episcopalian? And we get excited, or maybe not so much, depending on how the conversation's going. And we smile broadly, because now we have this opportunity for an evangelism moment. And we say things like, our church was founded by the same people who founded our country. Or, we've had the most presidents of any other denomination. Or, the National Cathedral is an Episcopal church. And I think more and more of us, especially in this room, say, Presiding Bishop Curry, that guy who gave the sermon at the royal wedding, we're with him. So, but when we hear these things that link us to power, sometimes it feels good. And sometimes it feels good to me too, and that's okay. However, we right now in the Episcopal Church are being challenged to look deeper at our identity and the stories that we tell ourselves. The Union of Black Episcopalians has long led the charge in exemplifying how we go about doing this work. And because we also know that this identification with power happens not just at the church-wide level, but it trickles down into our local parishes. As we have those signs outside our local churches that say, the Episcopal Church welcomes you. But we know, and many of us in this room know, that that is not always the case.
Well, tell it.
If Jesus were walking among us today, would he identify as Episcopalian? Y'all are church leaders. You have a tremendous impact on the people that you form in your ministry areas. So in what ways are we going to also take the things that we've learned here at this conference and bring them home? How do we help others learn these things as well? So as Reverend Collins said, I'm acutely aware that I am the president of the House of Deputies and a president of many firsts. I'm the first Latina, the first woman of color, the youngest president, a non-cradle Episcopalian that grew up working class, among a few other things. The presiding bishop pointed out that I'm probably the first president with tattoos. So that means that at church events, not this one, but typically others, I am more likely to be pegged by my fellow Episcopalians as a member of the hospitality staff of the Hotel and Conference Center, and not a presiding officer of our church. And I know that I'm not alone in this, that you all have had these similar unfortunate confusions about roles in our church. And so these identities and lived experiences that I have and that you have, we carry them with us everywhere we go. And they inform me, my lived experience informs me on how I will lead as president. And you can see it in the 3 priority themes that I've developed for President of House of Deputies. They are accessibility, inclusivity, and safety. And these priority themes inform my actions, my words, and my work. And so the irony is not lost on me when I say that the Episcopal Church needs to challenge, question, and reshape its identity so that we no longer identify as the civic religion of the white upper class.
Amen.
At this moment in the life of our church, we are being called into a season of truth-telling, transparency, and accountability. As Christians, you all know the 2,000-year-old Christian tradition of formation that involves repentance, reflection, and practice. What does that tradition mean for Episcopalians today? It means we need to take a hard look at ourselves and our history, to come to grips with how we used oppressive systems to gain power and wealth as a key element to our repentance. What is relevant in our society today is this type of authentic repentance. We are in a time of truth-telling in our culture, where we are being called to be honest about how our parishes accumulated their wealth and acquired their land. We were not only complicit in slavery, but have directly benefited through our investments in the slave trade, and that wealth has been the basis of our church's endowments that we now draw upon as we face denominational decline.
Go ahead, tell the story.
We sing hymns about how the oppressed will be freed from their abuses of the empire, and yet we, the Episcopal Church, have been the empire. We must face these historic realities because they affect who we are making to feel comfortable in our pews today. Because, my friends, I will say it again, we are being called into a season of institutional truth-telling, transparency, and accountability. As we move forward to reflection, we can see how our lack of repentance has created a system where young people are not seeing themselves in our church, and we are not seeing them. We are so sure that we know who is Episcopalian just by looking at them by virtue of their age, race, gender identity and expression, ethnicity, education, and income. Let's talk about income sometime.
Please.
I am thrilled, beyond thrilled, to see that youth and young people are playing key roles in this conference. It is really unusual. Which once again shows how the UBE is leading the way and forging a new path for us as a church, once again. Because our church, on the whole, does not reflect younger generations. And I'm using plural for generations, because here in this context intentionally, because we are leaving whole generations of young people behind who are not seeing themselves in our churches today. They feel disconnected from our communities, from our worship practices, and from our leadership. And for these young prophets, Episcopal institutions need to be honest about their history, otherwise they will pass us by. And I know we can do this work. I am a witness to, an example of, this work in action. The Episcopal Church, although flawed, has been the place where I have been able to feel belonging, healing, and wholeness. And I suspect that you have these experiences too. That this church is a place where you can bring your whole self. Take a moment to reflect on a time in the church when you could bring your whole authentic self. Maybe it happened this week, maybe even at this conference. Because I know that we can become faith communities that are honest, authentic, inclusive, and safe. Because we together, all of us, are witnesses that we can be a church that is about Jesus and not about empire. Because we can be a church that is about inclusion and openness. We can develop and support efforts that form us into faith communities that welcome all people, We are followers of a Jesus who showed us how to do this work. He showed us through his disciples, through his love, through his teachings, and through his sacrifice. But this means that we, as a church, need to learn to center on narratives from younger leaders, from people of color, from LGBTQ folks. And those are people we don't typically hear from in the church. Because it is them who will lead us into the future, to forge that new path forward, and us in this room. Our church needs to be like the Israelites following Miriam with her tambourine. We need to learn to walk humbly behind Miriam. Because, my friends, humility also means that we do not know how this ends. We hold onto hope because Jesus is in charge and not us. Because what does God require of us? Do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Amen. And so, UBE, thank you so much for showing us how to do this work for over 200 years. It is an honor to be here with you. Thank you.